This is a Bald Cypress. I picked this guy up last February. Here's a couple pictures from like right when I picked it up. I did the trunk split. I didn't make a video of it just because I wasn't sure if it was going to survive or not. Here's a quick picture from it in March. Obviously it did survive, and then I made a little video of it in June. And in June, I did not take any pictures of this one. I actually used the other tree for the thumbnail, but I picked them both up. They were just clearance plants. Experimented. Turns out it's working fairly well. I mean, I don't know what this thing will look like, you know, 5-10 years down the road, but right now I'm pretty happy that it actually even just survived the split. Before I give you guys any closer up looks on it, I am just going to go ahead and shorten it up a ton here. I'm going to bring these two branches down and then clip some of these back pretty much shorter, and then give you guys a closer look at the split. And I might even try to see if I can't get this thing to maybe spread out a little bit further. My future goal, my goal would be, I don't want anything to be huge on this tree. Sometimes when you see some Bald Cypress, they have, you know, really nice thick trunks on it. I do want the trunk to continue thickening up, obviously, but I don't want it to be, you know, huge and unmanageable. I'd like to keep it somewhat small / delicate, if you will, and then just have it have twin trunks, you know, competing with you, not competing, but have the feature of it be the actual split of the trunk. Whether or not that turns out to be a bunch of callus tissue from where it heals up, it should look interesting if that happens. If it doesn't heal up and it just heals up around the edges, and again, I'll show you closer up what it looks like right now, then I'll just go ahead and maybe make a hollow out of it, and then that can be the feature too, just kind of depending on what the tree gives me. All right, and before I start clipping away, I was going to mention I'd really like to work on the one I have in the tub. It actually already even has some green showing on it. But it's a little bit too heavy. Either I'm going to have to do that video outside, or I got to get somebody over here to help me get it in here. It's just too heavy for me to get in on my own. These were pretty much this one and all the other ones, although they just kind of each reacted differently. We had two pretty good storms, kind of grazed us, and then we had one that was actually, didn't really get that close, but it just seemed to defoliate. I mean, these were actually defoliated basically 3 times last year. And then after the last, like the closest hurricane we actually got, which right now my memory is just fading as to exactly when that was. As school had already started, we missed a bunch of school for it and everything. It actually did green back out, and some of it is still green, but that's all of these fall colors on here. I don't know what the colors look like, how they're going to come out on the video, but some of it's actually still even a little bit green. But I've actually noticed on those bigger ones, I've got like new growth coming out. I'd like to work on those. I'm going to try to get them in with about a week. We've had a cold week this week, and then next week it's going to be cold, I think Thursday and Friday, and then it's supposed to warm up. If I can't get anybody over here to help me get them inside, I just might go ahead and do the video outside, because I do want to get that work on them. Anyway, I thought I'd mention that real quick. I'm going to take these down to about the same height. And then there's only one branch I'd really like to get some wire on. I might use a guy wire on that. I probably do have guy wires on here somewhere in the pot. I know I have on the other one, I got some guy wire. But I definitely don't want it to compete with the Apex along with any of the other ones. So I'm going to cut everything back fairly short here. Alright, and now I can give you guys a little bit of a better look here. And of course, before we can get a little bit of a better look, go ahead and get all these weeds out. Alright, and even with the camera off there, I took and dug just a couple inches of dirt out too. Had a hard time getting some of those weeds. I'm going to go ahead and guess that perhaps maybe next year or the year after that, I'll go ahead and try to repot it, try to expose some more. You can see the split actually goes below ground just a little bit. That's what I was going to try to shoot for, is try to get out enough dirt there. But let's look at it from the other side there. Seems like maybe you guys can see it a little bit better from this angle. I did pull this out a couple times in late summer once I saw it growing really well, just to see if maybe this is actually just a piece from the chop I took, And while I don't want it any further apart down here, I'm just going to put that back in where it was. Maybe a little bit more firmly. And actually that does kind of help spread these things out a little bit. Alright, and me repositioning this thing on the bottom actually did help this spread it out quite a bit. I got this tools, one of the tools that came in a toolkit that was actually sent to me. Don't know really what I was ever supposed to do with it anyway. But I did, when I was testing it in there, it barely fit, and I thought I was going to have to stretch a little bit. But then once I put this in here, it actually was just about the right position for it. Not really even moving it all that much. But I did notice throughout the year that it did try to, you know, close itself up some. I do want to make them to where they're far enough apart to really make a difference. So you can see it rolling over there just a little bit. That's why I have some doubts as to whether or not I'll be able to roll over completely one day. The inner wood, except for, you know, just a couple, I just pulled that off of there. The inner wood is not rotting yet, so I can't really just pluck it right out of there the way it is. Let's see if you guys can see the other side. There's the other side of the split. You can see it's rolling over a little bit better on this side. I think it's just because that bigger branch was there. This side is really not rolling over at all. Kind of weird because there are these two branches here. But we'll see what happens after this year. Obviously last year it survived that split, so you know this year all I did was just kind of spread it out a little bit further, so I think it'll have a little more chance to recover. Alright, and then there's this guy here. And again, I'll just show you a couple of those pictures I took in February when I got it. This one I just did, you know, traditional chop with, if you will. And then I do have a picture of this one right at the beginning of before I worked on them in June. And of course here it is looking pretty bare. If my memory serves me correctly, which I think maybe perhaps some of the parting I did in the 80s might be catching up with me and my memory is not all that great. But I do believe that after the first tropical storm we had last year, this one actually held on to all of its leaves. And then after the last one we had, this one actually looked worse than all of them. And it was kind of strange how those things kind of happen sometimes, but it definitely happened. I do have guy wires on these branches. Right now, this very second, they're not really doing all that much, but I'm going to leave them in place. First thing I'm going to do on this is cut it way back again. And actually, I am going to take this one off. I'll explain more about that in a minute, but go ahead and get all these cut back. And this one, I guess somewhere right around here. Pop that guy out too. And of course here we are, basically almost down to nothing. Just like the other one, I'm going to get rid of these weeds. I don't know why this one has significantly less weeds than the other one, but completely happy with the recovery and all that kind of stuff. The only thing I'm kind of a little upset about is that this new leader did not come off the chop at all. Actually, with like earlier you'd be able to see that it kind of came out here and it was its own branch, but it did decide to become the leader, so it just kind of took off and got much thicker than the other ones. But it's not even on top of that scar there. It's actually kind of next to it. And since all three of these branches are a little close together, I mean, these two are going to be borderline like bar branches, but not super worried about it being this low on the trunk. Eventually, this should kind of spread out anyway. But I am going to go ahead and just take this guy all the way off. I think, you know, this third one here is coming out just on this side of the scar. And I'm just going to try to take that scar back a little bit with some knot covers and see if I can't promote some rolling over going from here. Clip that off. I don't need to leave that that long. And there we go. That should enable this leader as it takes off to just go ahead and continue rolling over a little bit better and not at such a sharp angle like it was. And then go ahead and just move this guy wire over here. I already had a hole in the pot there. I've been kind of switching back and forth with the same wire on both of those all summer. Let's see if yeah, I can't get too much more out of that one. That's pretty much as far as it'll go. But we'll see how this one goes. This one, I may choose to repot this one. I mean, I already know you can get really rough with these when you go to repot them. But I might try and get really brutal with this. I think I only paid like 12 bucks for both of these. Like next spring, go ahead and try to give this one a repot. Get pretty brutal with it, like I said. And then just see what I can do with that split trunk one. I do want the split trunk one definitely to survive. I'd like to see what that looks like in the future and everything. But this is actually one of the first of two of the bald cypresses I ever got. I got these on clearance from Lowe's. I got two of them 2 years ago. This is one of them, and then 1 year ago I got some smaller ones. I may attach this onto the video with the two smaller ones earlier. I was thinking about hanging on to that video and just doing an update with it later. But these are really, this one's really hard to update. Simply because, first off, I did have to cut the top off here, kind of to make it to where I can get inside. You guys can barely even see just how tall that was. And just to give a quick shot here, that's the chop mark there, and I chopped it right there around the same time last year, so that's just 1 year's worth of growth, what I'm holding in this hand, and that little more. Real quick, before I get into some other things, you can see there's a little bit of a bulge here. But first things first, before I even move it around too much, this is just some damage that I caught. This is actually I thought I was growing, oh geez. I thought I was growing a Pride of Barbados tree from seed, and I had it in this little seed pot. It's one of these little seed pots. It's one of these peat pots that just kind of rots away when you're done with it. After one of our storms, I found this all just kind of damaged with some other trees. I actually have it over by a completely different set of trees, and some trees have kind of fell on top of it, and I noticed that the pot was all rotted out and everything. And so I just kind of set it in here, just hoping it could take off, and then maybe in around a month, not right now, I was going to repot it, but it won't hurt anything to do it now. I thought it'd kind of actually take advantage of being put in this other soil and take off, and basically it didn't this way, but it looks like it did with a root here. This root is super long. Is just take the rest of this peat pot off. I'll throw that away. And then just throw it in here. I have some used bonsai substrate in the bottom of this. I've got like 3 or 4 of these things growing. And then I just realized I started one thought and didn't finish it. I thought that this was a Pride of Barbados tree, but I noticed it's got some thorns on it. I know it's from the same family that the Pride of Barbados tree is, but I would like to find out exactly what it is one day and try to let it flower before I go planting any in my yard. But I'm going to go on a little side quest here. I'm going to get that outside, and I'm going to get this top of this tree in the garbage, and then we'll come back and kind of finish this guy up. Alright, side quests are complete. In the other video, or the beginning of this video, if I do decide to include those, or in my previous video about Bald Cypress, I was talking about this one was the only one that was actually getting some buds on. Early spring buds. And probably hard for you guys to see. I know you guys can see those pretty well in there. Just some little tiny green spots in there. If I do include this in that other video, these trees really got just beat the hell up by a few tropical storms last year. 2 of them were kind of misses, but at the same time, seemed like it defoliated these pretty well. And then the other one, it wasn't a direct hit, but we did get beat up pretty well on it. And so, you know, with all those beatings up and defoliation, I'm sure these things can kind of take whatever I'm going to do to them. But this is in a, I was considering doing this video outside. It's actually in a, this is like a mortar mixing tub from Lowe's. I have a bunch of holes drilled in the bottom of it. I do not soak this one in water. I haven't soaked any of mine in water. I'm considering doing it to the next one I'm going to do. This one's just going to go right back out there in place. You can actually, it's too heavy for me to show you, but if I picked it up, you can actually see almost all those holes have a root coming out of them. Doesn't drain all that great, so it is kind of in some swampy stuff here. Not having it in water definitely hasn't hampered any growth. The the mortar mixer is in the long way here, but this will probably wind up being what the front is. It's a big scar here. When I initially potted it, I took and I cut a wedge right down the middle, and then when I did the first work on it, I just kind of cut it in, took the saw and cut it on that side and took off half of it. Once I saw which side the leader was on, the leader came out on this side. So I did that, and in a minute you'll be able to see a little more on how much it's kind of rolled over and started healing up some. I am going to cut everything. I don't know if I'd use the term way back, but I'm going to back pretty well. See here, this had another branch coming out right next to this one. I cut this one off because I had been able to successfully, I'm going to take this guy wire just kind of off for the time being. It's been successfully holding it down with the guy wire there. All these little spindly branches, even this one that you guys can't see in the back, anything down low I'm going to leave just in the hope to build up maybe even a little more taper than it already has. And then just with this bulge here, I'm going to take off all the longer shoots. And then it will be hard to show you, but there are two of these coming out right at the same spot, and it's just below the bulge. These two are actually fully below the bulge, so I'll leave those go because that's actually a little bit of a skinny spot. I wouldn't mind that swelling up some more. These two right here are right on it, and basically without any rhyme or reason, I'm just going to go ahead and just pop one of these off. This guy wire I really need to reposition anyway. I think I had it here for another branch that was over here. Then this one sprouted out instead. So actually I might just go ahead and do it now. Now when I hook it on there, I can kind of bring it back this right way a little bit better. And see what happens there. I used to have a ficus tree in this container, and there's all kinds of holes drilled along the side, kind of just for that purpose of holding down, using some guy wires and stuff. Alright, I changed angles just a little bit here. This is the big wound that I made purposely. You can see here where it's kind of healing over a little bit, rolling over and everything. And right here, this is kind of the, almost you want to say vein of where this leader's kind of coming up. And it's a little bulgy, a little bit easier to see in person. And when I can spin it around a little bit easier. But this tray is kind of big for me to kind of give you guys too much of a 360 view all the way around and everything. I think I was actually at first trying to use that guy wire to hold this down. Then I realized it was growing so strong that it kind of wanted to go straight up. And I was going to use the guy wire to try to hold down some of those branches. Somewhere midsummer, I actually did a chop on it because it seemed like it was starting to compete with this. And then I realized if I let it go, I'd probably wind up with like two bulges on either side. And so what I'm going to do now is just take my handsaw here and just cut that whole little piece off. And then just allow the leader to lead, if you will, and everything. So I'm going to do that here real quick. Actually, I'm going to cut off a couple of these branches that are going to be in the way of the saw first. Keep some of these off. Try to get a decent little angle on it instead of just cutting off that branch. And there we go. Alright, and while I had the camera close up here, figured I'd give you guys a look at the roots. In terms of if you were just looking at the Nbari, this would actually be the best side to look at. Got a surface root coming out there. When I first potted it, that was a little spongy. I used to have a big boulder sitting here. I think I borrowed the boulder just to hold something down in the wind. And now that's held down a lot better. There is one here that's alive. If you dig down in any of this, which I just don't really want to because I don't want to disturb it, you'll find all kinds of roots circling and going everywhere. And here should be an interesting repot whenever I do get to it. This is pointing out towards what I probably has the front of the tree one day, which could be kind of detrimental to what I want to do. I was hoping it would grow enough to fill in, but as we kind of get around to look at it here, it's even died on top. but still you can still see some live bark there kind of growing over. It's interesting, but I definitely don't like the way that it's got a gap there and everything. This would probably be about the worst side of it, although looking at the screen and the camera there, it doesn't look too bad. It does have some kind of muscles, if you will, here. Ridges, I guess you would call them. And then that would be the last side there. Now this side, because I have these two live roots coming out here, could use as a front, especially because this is the side, you guys can't see it, but it's the side with that big scar facing away, so that would be where the scar was the least visible. But I did want to use this scar here as a feature. Alright, just one last overall look at it here. You know, really can't beat the size of it and everything for 50 bucks. I could, if I was a little younger, maybe I'd try to join one of those groups that go out in the swamp hunting and everything. My bag just can't really take anything all that much bigger than this anyway. There's that part I cut off. A couple more years of probably some good chop and grow until I actually maybe start trying to wire something down permanent. I did get the guy wires back on. Put the guy wire on this little branch here. Not much, but like I said, I would like to save it just to get some growth down low. And then this would be the side with no scars if I decided to have a side with no scars. But I do think I want to include that other side as a hollow or something. Really couldn't quite get the top in there, but that's all coming off anyhow. Before I start doing the work, get to the other side here. And the top is right there where my hand is, so it's just right up out of the view. This takes a little more adjustments just to be able to get the whole thing in the picture. I'm trying to get as much of it as possible, so got all this ramification on here. And sometimes when I look at it, I was thinking about just trimming all this off short, but trying to leave as much ramification as I can, but taking it down to, right around this height. Right around here was the original chop I did on this one. This one I think I just cut at an angle. This one is just really not turning out anyway like I had kind of envisioned, if you will. Not bad, it's alive, it's perfectly healthy, but just kind of nothing like I had envisioned. This is one of the only ones that actually held on to some kind of wintertime foliage. This is the bronzing that makes them desirable for the winter, and one of the only deciduous trees that we can really grow down here in Florida. I say one of the only, but one of the very few. Chopped it to right here last year. I don't know if I didn't chop this at all or if that just kind of took off. But I am gonna come down pretty low with everything. I think I'm gonna do something drastic once I can get the better look at it anyhow. So right now I'm just gonna get some of the stuff out of the way. Alright, so this one did not get the long leader like the other one did. And still, even with all that growth, I would have thought that it would have started doing a little more of the healing over, rolling over process here, and it didn't. I mean, of course, some explanations as to why it didn't get that long leader like the other one did. I mean, one could be because the roots are a little more restricted in this pot than they are in that one. I mean, there's some other explanations too. Sometimes it's funny the way when I read some of the forums on, say, Facebook or something like that, everybody acts sometimes like every plant's going to act the same. They're all going to act a little bit differently. Sometimes you do just have to kind of live with what the tree is giving you. I've kind of thought about a few different scenarios with what I could do. So I am going to try to save this by cutting just these two out here. Getting a little more of an angle there. This isn't very thick through there. So I think I should be able to. It's just going to be hard to do without damaging that a whole bunch. All right, a little bit of a closer view here. So I did take off those two pieces, or those two branches there. And before I try to clean that up any, I'm gonna look and see. You guys can see that's what I just cut now. This is where it would split. And then here's the one branch I was considering cutting things down to begin with. And of course, poking up here is that lower one that was going to be a drastic move. I'd like to go ahead and get a bulk of that out. I'd like to get actually almost, if I thought I could cut it as an angle better, I got this Silky Boy. It's about the best hand saw I got. I really should consider buying a Sawzall or something. It really would make this a lot easier. If I thought I could get it to go at a better angle, I'd just cut that little piece out. But what I'm going to do is I can actually see an old saw scar right there. Is I'm going to kind of come in straight there, try not to damage either one of these two, and then it just might have to pluck that whole piece out there and hope that this taller piece kind of clings to life. And again, just keeping in mind, if it doesn't, I can always cut it down to this one day if I need to. I would like to keep the tree fairly short, so no worries about losing any of the height from those other pieces. Alright, and then let's just see how that did there. Went a little deeper than I wanted it to, but I think that might not be a bad thing. See, now when I'm twisting on it, I can see it's still attached to that some. So now I'll just come straight down with it here until it's kind of unattached, if you will. And there we go. Alright, I anticipate that to work out really well. I think I left just enough of the mature wood in there to kind of hold that up and keep it alive. Didn't really get into any of that live vein at all there. And let's take a look at the overall thing. Well, alright then, I guess that's that. So look at the rest of it here. I'm not sure if I mentioned or not, this is the one I'm actually considering dunking. It's smaller than one of those tubs. I can just buy a new one and use the new one for my repotting videos and everything, and then take that old one, or take the one I've been using now for the repotting videos and not drill any holes in it and just set it in there. If it does start getting some growth down here, like I hope it does, I could put some holes on the side, use them for guy wires, and just kind of experiment with dunking one. And I figure this tree's light enough. If mosquitoes or anything like that become an issue, or just algae and everything, I can just take this out, dump that water every now and again. I'm just going to see how that goes, experiment with one. Kind of see, well, you guys just saw what I just did a little bit closer up. I was going to say you can see it maybe a little bit better here. I was considering going ahead and taking this out just to make sure that more energy goes that way. But I'm still not sure how that's going to hold up with just that little kind of tower of growth there and everything. If that takes off, I may consider lumping that off, but we'll just see what happens. I mean, I'd probably wait till this time next year to really do that anyway. It's pretty interesting. It's like I said, this is my first, been in the hobby now, about 6 years. A little bit longer than that, about 7, I guess now. But the way it kind of almost looks like it exploded out of that hole there, it kind of ripped a little bit of the bark around it. And then it's got a little split there. This one does not have nearly as, I say, impressive, as organized of a look down here. I'm thinking perhaps maybe the next time I repot it, I'll repot a little bit differently or a little bit deeper. I do think just with the way this is, it might be a little bit high up in here anyway. So if I get it a little bit deeper, that might help anyhow. When I was sawing, I don't know if you guys noticed or not, I'm sure the sharp-eyed people did, it's not really even all that tight in the pot. I've had it in here for 2 years. I thought it would be almost a bear to repot now, but it's not even all that tight in there. But we'll check in on it in a little while. This one's might be a little easier to update you guys on than that other big one. I might do maybe a short video or something on the other one when it starts back budding and everything. This one I might be able to bring in and do some updates with.